Welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. And today, once again, we have to save the presidency. And there's only one woman who can do it. And she's the only woman in the history of the planet who has run a successful presidential campaign. It's been all dudes. It's been a sausage fest. But somehow she was able to navigate the Clinton machine and prevail. She is almost single-handedly responsible for giving us the delightful videos of crying Hillary supporters at the Javits Center. If you're ever in a bad mood, trust me, those will lift your spirits immediately. She has a brand new book out called
Here's the Deal.
Here's the Deal. Kellyanne Conway. Welcome to Kennedy Saves the World.
Well, Kennedy, I'd like to be one small molecule helping you achieve exactly that. How do we do it?
We have no choice.
We don't. We have a voice.
Your book is great, well written. Didn't want to put it down. I was at the dermatologist and they kept interrupting me. And I was like, please just stop. Okay?
I'm on chapter 18.
My skin's not going anywhere. I have to know what happens here. But, you know, I've always been fascinated by your rise because when I knew you at Fox before you joined Trump World, you were an analyst. You were someone who consumed data and talked about the political landscape from a Republican point of view. And, you know, to me, you were a famous person and a brand in your own right. And then when you entered, you know, sort of the dirty push up your sleeves world of presidential politics, I was very impressed and alarmed because I know it's a weird and cutthroat world. But from what you knew about politics, from what you knew about campaigns, the stories that you heard, things that you had seen firsthand, how different was it navigating the whole thing, the whole enchilada, with someone as unconventional as Donald Trump?
Oh, wonderful. Great questions. Thanks for reading the book, Kennedy, not just covering the book, but reading the book. It really is a book for everyone. It's my circuitous, unlikely journey, but in many ways, it's any woman's story because this is the greatest country ever, and we all work hard and once in a while get a lucky break. I was an unconventional pollster in the Republican Party, and Republican polling can be a very male-dominated industry. That's okay until it's not. And what made it not okay were the many times that the seat at the big boys' table was neither freely given to me nor sometimes there. You know, I would go to sit down and it'd be pulled out from under me. So I have to thank a lot of those male consultants because in sort of pushing me to the side and trying to sideline me from Republican polling, it forced me to go out and do a lot of work for corporate America, consumer America, nonprofit America. And what I learned, Kennedy, in doing projects in all 50 states in this country and the territories is the essential wisdom of people matters. And folks have great ideas and impressions. And if you listen to them carefully and consistently, you can learn a great deal. Contrast that with Hillary Clinton, who literally called so many millions of Americans deplorable and worse, irredeemable. I learned to respect the essential wisdom of people. They were looking for years for somebody who, quote, has a ton of experience, but not in Washington, not in politics. You're thinking, well, who can that be? And it turned out Donald Trump, at the right time, was the wish fulfillment of what people have been telling pollsters for decades, that I want somebody who comes pre-verified, who's successful, who I can relate to and can relate to me, but is not one of these people who has spent 20 years in Washington or even 10 years in a governor's mansion and then Washington. Hillary ran on her experience. In 2008, against Senator Obama, lost in the primary. She ran again with even more experience, including Secretary of State by then, 8 years later against Mr. Donald Trump, the businessman. People rejected her both times for a number of reasons, but in part because they looked at her experience as too swampy, as too of Washington, as to fill up my bio so one day I could become president. But Donald Trump is an unconventional candidate, put an unconventional team around him also. He did not go for the same pollster that worked for Bob Dole and John McCain and Mitt Romney. Do you see a pattern here? They all lost.
But I want to ask you about that because that's something that's always been fascinating to me because the former president operates by intuition and feel. When he gets a feel for someone and he feels that he can trust someone, then he invests himself in that person. But unfortunately, there are charlatans like Paul Manafort who are essentially sociopaths who are able to chameleon their way into someone's good graces by becoming what seems like a trustworthy person when really they're not. So, you're having to deal with people like Brad Parscale and Paul Manafort and these blowhards who really aren't working very hard. And, a friend of mine who is a cardiothoracic surgeon, she happens to be a woman, and she said, when you have the choice for a doctor, always choose a woman because they have to work twice as hard for half the credit. And it seems to be the way in presidential politics. Are women at a disadvantage, and can you relate to Hillary Clinton when she says that being a woman put her at a disadvantage and people automatically use that against her, and that's why she didn't win?
For all the benefits that women have living in the 21st century, for how the great strides you made in education levels and economically and obviously professionally, and we own land now and we own homes and we do all these great things. We're part of the investor class. We're in charge of our retirement securities. We're in charge of our bodies, all these great things that have happened. Women in politics still make for strange bedfellows. It is not a place where women see themselves easily because it's a system that they can't necessarily relate to or access or would want to. They'll say, well, I don't know, politics, all that partisanship, where's the place for me? I'm a good negotiator, I'm a consensus builder, or I'm ethical, or why would I work half time in Washington and half time back at home, wherever that is. So it's difficult for many women to picture themselves in the game. That's changed, of course, but it's changed more rapidly on the Democrat side. And on the Republican side, you do see more and more women running as Republicans. Maya Flores just winning in the Rio Grande Valley, Mexican-born congresswoman who ran on legal immigration and is married to a Border Patrol agent. She's a great messenger, I think, for women and minority women who want to be Republicans at any level. You see again and again women in 2020, Kennedy, when no single Republican incumbent lost for Congress. Pretty remarkable if you lose the presidency and you lose nobody in Congress. Of the 15 congressional seats that went from blue Democrat to red Republican, they were won by a woman, a minority, a veteran, or a combination thereof. So you do see people, but I write in my book, Here's the Deal, that I had hit my head against the plexiglass ceiling many times. And that is true. And look, with Hillary Clinton, after 2008, I feel like I needed a shower. I watched the way Hillary Clinton was treated, and I watched the way Sarah Palin was treated. And it was just terrible, and it was very gendered. There's no question. At the time, I had 2 daughters, and now I have 3, and I always said, I wouldn't tell my daughters to run for either president or vice president after that experience. Caribou Barbie, Hillary crying. They talked about Hillary's cleavage in a Washington Post article that was supposed to be about fashion. So sure, but I don't feel too sorry for Hillary Clinton because I think her path is the path of many Democratic women. She got there through her husband. And she doesn't like to be reminded of that, but that's true. That's how we know her. We hear about Kellyanne Conway's husband, so he got to be known through his conservative wife. But Hillary Clinton, in the end, she was too much Hillary, not enough Clinton. She didn't have the charm and the people skills and the connective tissue with America that Bill Clinton had. But yes, I think one of the worst moments for Barack Obama when he was running for president in 2008 was when Hillary said to the moderator in the presidential debate, well, it hurts my feelings when you ask if I'm likable. And he literally said, you're likable enough, Hillary. It was such an insult.
We'll talk about your husband, George, in just a little bit, because I had a personal reaction to seeing him, and I want your opinion on that, because it was very similar to the reaction that I had to another person who has been in the news. And we'll discuss that in just a moment. But you wrote something in your book that I thought was very interesting. And I don't know if it was a throwaway description, but I thought there might be more to it in terms of how you work and your story. And I also thought about it in terms of other successful women in politics. I don't consider Hillary Clinton to be successful, having lost the presidency twice. But you talk about being raised in a family of self-denying Italian Catholic women.
Yes.
And that phrase self-denying I thought was really interesting to me, because I think, if you're honest with yourself and you are in a profession that's dominated by men, there's a part of you that is naturally self-denying,
Yes.
and that you are able to handle a bunch of things at once. That is, there is a difference in men's brains versus women's brains, and women's brains actually grow and have a capacity to multitask in a way that men just don't. It's not their fault. They don't have that.
For the full podcast, go to foxnewspodcast.com.